The Grand County John Doe, 1983, identified as Robby Peay. A man was hiking in Arches National Park at Three Gossips area of Moab, Utah, and this was in February of 1983. It was here the man found the decedent's remains in a sandy wash that was located less than 100 yards from the pavement. There isn't any post-mortem information, which means I'm not sure how long he'd been there before he was found. Although I can say we know now it couldn't have been more than 4 months. The dry desert air would help in preserving the scene. Our John Doe had been shot in the back of the head and was found lying sprawled on his back. Our John Doe had been buried in an unmarked grave in a local cemetery, and this was pending new information as they tried to name him. Early on, they believed they knew who he was. At some point, the police believed it could be Robby Peay, a local teen who went missing from the Youth Diagnostic Center, and this at the time was a juvenile detention center in Salt Lake City, Utah. The detention center was a few hundred miles or 320 kilometers away. They would obtain Bobby's dental films and compare them, but they didn't match, so they were back to the drawing board. They couldn't find any other missing persons that it even could be, saying they were often bewildered because his remains had so many similarities to the missing young man. It also reignited the search for Robby Peay, and they had looked for him from the beginning. They had initially tried really hard to find him. They heard a lot of chatter about Robby and conversations that he'd had with others, but that chatter stopped around the time the John Doe was found. They knew about a fake ID in his possession that he often used to buy alcohol. There were leads from many of those who knew him, saying he'd moved to Colorado. They were unable to find Robby under even a false name. After the leads dried up, the case of Robby as a missing person would go cold. Later they would say we could never prove he was living under an alias in Colorado, and that they had really tried. Robby's family would have him declared deceased in 1990. His sister would say that their mom only did that to sell some property that his name was included on. However, his share from that sale would be saved for him for decades, in hopes she could give it to him someday. Decades later, she would share that money among her other children, suddenly facing the likelihood she would never see her son again, although she never stopped hoping. The family would place a gravestone for Robby in the Provo City Cemetery, in memory of the son and brother that they never forgot. In 1993, the police would receive an anonymous tip that Robby and 2 others were playing a version of Russian roulette when he went missing. Rather than each person pointing the themselves, that they would point the to the back of someone else's head. According to the person who called in the tip, that he was buried near a cave in Highland, Utah. Slightly later that same year, in 1993, a truck was found at the bottom of Lake Powell, and this truck was tied to Robby. This is about 350 miles or 560 kilometers from where Robby's remains were found. The truck was only found because water levels had dropped and it could clearly be seen. We know now that an acquaintance of Robby's had confessed to purchasing the truck for Robby after he'd run away. Whoever launched it into the water used wire to keep the steering wheel from moving. In 2018, a Provo officer was unable to work in the field due to surgery, so he began examining some cold cases. It was then that Robby's case would again be opened and looked at. He was nearing 18 when he went missing, and would have been 53 on this date if he was still alive. A possible John Doe showed up in another state, and he would compare the case to that of Robby. And while it wasn't Robby, it called attention once again to Robby's case. The officer would try to compare from his side, once again, due to the similarities of the John Doe who was found in Moab. Detective Chambers said it was during that time that he had a forensic odontologist look at the x-rays, and this would change everything. When the original dental x-rays were entered, they switched them. The bottom looked like the top, and the top looked like the bottom. So the doctor would realize that it wasn't right and made the corrections. Right after this, there was a hit on the same John Doe case. It was a match, and Robby had been located. They would need to confirm using DNA, but that wasn't as easy as it sounds. It turns out that Robby was adopted as an infant. This would mean that the biological family's DNA was needed to confirm it. This would, of course, mean fighting to get through adoption records and find the family's name. There aren't really any details on Robby's troubles. It appears there was a substance or mental health problem, but he was a young man with his whole life ahead of him. There are some indications he was living with a man in his 50s who was here in the U.S. from the Netherlands. They still don't know who called in the tip about him being buried, But it's interesting that while it wasn't correct about the location, the wound was in the same place included in the tip. It sounds like they dismissed it, so of course there may be more than we know. Robby's mother would pass away in September of 2020. For some reason, even after they hit on his dental x-rays, they didn't approach the family. They would not approach the family until October of 2020, 1 month after Robby's mother passed away, never knowing that Robby had been found. The Utah Office of Medical Examination had decided that the x-rays came from his youth, so it wasn't a confirmation until there was DNA. It would take 2 more years until 2022, when a judge would finally approve the release of Bobby's adoption records. More time would pass until they could locate the biological mother's brother, and he would agree to do a DNA swab. This is what was compared to Robby's DNA. With this, the medical examiner's office would certify the DNA match. There was a long journey to identify him, but it finally happened. But there is more than one sad detail. Not only did they not tell Robby's mom once they had a dental match, not only did they not give Robby's mom any information about the possible identification, her family would not even learn about the identification from the authorities. His sister would give an interview to a local news station. She would say that her family had no idea he'd been identified at all. They found out on a news program when it was covered by the local press. The police did not reach out to the family at all. They had to hear it on the news. His sister would share that she had been close with Robby when they had been younger. But she was older and she'd gotten married and wasn't at home anymore. And it was at that time that he fell in with the wrong group of people. He eventually began skipping school, and he was known to experiment with substances. She would share that he wasn't actually in trouble with the law, as it looked from the outside. But he was in treatment because his mother was trying to find somewhere that could help him be his better self. He had at this time become a very angry person, as he was struggling to cope with his parents' divorce. And unfortunately, his father was traveling to another family's farm in Springfield when he would be hit by a train. This was all too much for Robby, and he'd run off multiple times. But he always called his mom, who he was really close to, at least up until this last time. And we do know after his escape, he was living with a man from the Netherlands, and that man is believed to have returned home to his home country, so it's impossible now to trace him. They tried in 2024 to find him, but they were unable to do so. And to be honest, if you ask my opinion, it's unlikely he's alive, as he would be in his late 90s today. Bobby's file includes photographs found in the truck and a letter. He was in the photographs, but that's the extent of what we know. For Bobby to have any real justice, someone will need to come forward. Robby went unidentified for 41 years. Had he lived the long life he should have, he would be 58 today. The Cobb County Jane Doe, 1984. Cobb County, Georgia. On May 10, 1984, a property owner would discover our Jane Doe on his land in Cobb County, Georgia. She had been dumped off the side of the road, and over a couple of months, weeds had grown around her, so it's really lucky she was spotted. They were unable to determine her COD, but they would conclude it was due to foul play, and the police considered that she may have been a sex worker. The shirt she was wearing was an extra large and had been thrown over her. It was a men's size 40, and it had the name George embroidered on it. Unfortunately, it's not the clue that it looked to be. They managed to find the previous owner of the shirt, and they would say that he worked at Doug Hyde Unlimited. No leads ever came from this, which makes me think the shirt had probably been given away. Additionally, she had a top with a Playboy bunny on it, and she was wearing the cowboy boots that are shown here. They believed she was just a young adult, maybe 18 to 25 in 1983. So those who loved her would be looking for someone born around 1958 to 1965. Her peers would likely be between 60 and 70 years old today. She was of average height, around 5'2" or 158 centimeters, and around 110 pounds or 50 kilograms. They were able to tell she'd had reconstructive surgery on her right eye, including a plastic orbital plate. Her left ankle had been fractured and repaired with pins. She had some sort of a metal plate in her left shoe, and they would say this suggests the shoe was corrective in some form. If anyone knows who she may have been, please call the number on the screen. The Cobb County Jane Doe has gone unidentified for 41 years.
Huge thanks for watching all the way to the end, and a big thanks to all of you who consistently like and comment on the videos. Whether you leave a full comment or an emoji, it makes a huge difference. The whole dance with YouTube is hard sometimes. I gain only about 350 subs a month. So if you consistently watch my videos, maybe take a moment to subscribe. It's a huge push toward the videos being suggested to new people. The next goal is 20,000. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other.